Over the past year or so, I've made friends with the spine at the local indoor skate park. This one's made out of wood, it's got no coping on the top, so that's allowed me to fire over the top with gay abandon willy-nilly. My favourite local concrete skate park has no spine built into it, so I usually just work on developing my lines, carving turns and lip tricks. But I've been itching to take my spine skills to the next level by having a go on some of the taller concrete spines with a double coping on the top. For this mission, I picked out 3 contrasting spines located at some of my favourite spots. The first one is located at a rather cruisy new bowl complex over in Beaminster. I had loads of fun visiting here, trying out new lines, skipping down that gully, but my focus quickly shifted to the centrepiece of this skate park, which is the rather manageable 4-foot concrete spine with double coping. The second spine of choice is definitely a level up. It's pretty steep and it's got particularly narrow double coping on the top. Makes it feel like you're balancing on a razor's edge. I came a cropper, felt like I was going to be chopped in half. Not half! The third spine of choice is located in the flow bowl at Concrete Waves. Now I hold this spine in quite high regard because the last time I tried to get over it, I failed pretty miserably. It's got the chunky coping on the top, so this would definitely provide a good test for any skills that I developed. I thought I'd start at the start with one of the simpler spine transfers. That for me is the rock over the top. So come in the regular stance, clear the front wheels, rock the board over the top, and then clear the back wheels on the exit. The local wooden spine has got no coping on the top, and that has allowed me to get away with blue murder. Examining some slow motion footage, I can clearly see that my back wheels aren't clearing, they're just rolling over the top of that no coping top. And I think that is going to spell disaster if I try the same technique on the double coping. So I decided to break this manoeuvre down into its 3 component pieces. The first part is the same as the start of a rock to fakey. When I started trying these spine transfers rocking over the top, I noticed that if I came up and didn't clear the front wheels, there was a chance it could dislodge my front foot, could end up in no man's land on the top of that coping with your feet in the wrong position. So I decided to routine coming up, clearing the front wheels off of the coping, and then being able to rock fakey back in. This was an issue that I hadn't encountered on my wooden ramp because it had no coping, so I could just go up there willy-nilly and the wheels wouldn't catch on anything and wouldn't dislodge my front foot. The key thing that allowed me to clear those front wheels was to keep my body nice and centered and then just pull that front knee up to my chest a little bit, thus clearing the front wheels. Then I could pop the middle of the board onto the coping, rock the back wheels off, and then do a rock to fakey back in. I found that as I got my courage up, I could increase my pump at the bottom, time that with the manualing of the board, that little knee up to the chest, clear the front wheels, and eventually I could get up onto the top into a stall and just get the feel of being up on the coping. And the key thing I found that could go wrong here was opening my shoulders up, and this would make the board spin on that coping. This is a good time to talk about the bail. In terms of front foot position, I favour popping it in the pocket just in front of the bolts. Thinking ahead, this will allow me to clear those back wheels by pushing down on the nose. And in the past, I found that if you try and bail when your feet are on either end of the board, basically you pull one foot up, the board comes with you, you end up doing the soft shoe shuffle on the top, and it all ends pretty emotionally. So the bail I opted for was to jump off the board with both feet simultaneously and try and kick the board away from me so I couldn't get mixed up with it on the way back in, end up doing the dreaded foot back on splits. The third stage was to put the big boy shorts on, rock the board forwards and get those back wheels to clear that coping. My big fear here was catching those back wheels on the coping, getting pitched off the front, I actually found on a few attempts that I could catch the wheels on the coping, and as long as I had enough front foot pressure, these would roll across the top and come back down. But nobody likes to see that. And it was a bit of a heart-stopping moment whenever I felt those wheels catch on the coping on the way back in. So I decided to isolate this element by practicing the fakey rock. So coming in fakey, again, clear the wheels, rock the board, and then snap that back leg up towards the chest to bring the wheels over the coping and then hit the transition on the way back in. I did a bit more practice to get my special bar up, and this gave me the confidence to put those three elements together. I bailed the ones that I didn't fancy, and I managed to make a few. The second manoeuvre I wanted to try was coming back over the spine, fakey. This essentially uses all the same ingredients as going over the spine forwards, only in reverse. So I needed to do my fakey rock entry, clearing the back wheels as I go up, rock up onto the top of the coping, and then fall back in backwards whilst clearing the front wheels. Now this one just felt a lot more scary, and I found that clearing those back wheels was the key to getting up on top of the coping without dislodging my feet. I also found I had to remember to keep my shoulders in line with the board, otherwise the board would go skew-if, especially on the narrower coping, on the guillotine ramp. That could quite easily spin round on the top of there. Coming back in, it was a case of committing the shoulders and the head backwards and then rock fakey and back in. I found a really good drill for getting the feel for this was to come up into a rock fakey on top of the coping and see if I could stall there on the top for a little bit of time, and that allowed me to get a feel for committing back in from a standing start. Again, my bailing technique, if I had a choice, was to jump off with both feet at the same time, kick the board away. I found that the transition could be used to scoop me up, either knee slide, or if I was wearing no pads, just slide down on me arse. I found that developing the ability to come back across that spine fakey opened up all sorts of possibilities, and also meant that on a double half pipe spine ramp configuration, I could drop in, do my rock over forwards, do a rock to fakey, come back over the spine, fakey, and then end up where I started. And this was most pleasing. At this point, I got the confidence to start tinkering with a little variation. This is to come in fakey, do a frontside 180 pivot up onto the coping, little layback hand, and then over the top. I found these to be fairly straightforward on the wooden spine ramp with the flat top and no coping. Just meant I can get away with blue murder coming back in, roll those back wheels over and ride away. However, on the double coping concrete spine ramp, it took a little bit more jiggery pokery to get over the top. I found the main thing I needed to do was to shift my foot pressures and make sure I had loads of pressure on the nose coming back in. As a final challenge, I wanted to have a go at axle stalling over the top of the spine ramp. Now, I've done these on the wooden spine ramp, and they're actually a little bit tricky because that top is quite wide. So when you lock in one way, you have to sort of fudge the back wheels into position to get back over. And it's pretty tricky to get a nice flowing frontside axle stall into backside axle stall transfer. So I was pretty excited to try these on the double coping spine ramp, hopefully lock in and develop a nice flowing manoeuvre. Again, my strategy was to break the manoeuvre down. The first part is a fakey frontside lock-in, and the second part is just a standard backside axle in. So I started practicing my fakey frontside axle stalls, seeing if I could get up on the top of the coping, balance there for a bit, and then come back in. I felt pretty confident that if I could get locked in on the top there, I'd be able to jig the back wheel into position and then axle back in. Now this one turned out to be the scariest one so far, and I entered into a little mini battle. Crikey! I found there are a couple of main things that could go wrong. Number one, not pumping hard enough up the transition and not getting the wheels to lock in. This meant the board slipped out, chopped in half on the top of the guillotine. The second one was coming in hot, 100% commitment, zero skill, missing the back wheel lock-in, over she goes. Oh my gosh. This one looks a little bit worse than it is, and I found it preferable to not going far enough, which was particularly emotional. If I went too far, I found it was possible to slide down the transition on the other side, which gathered me up. I found the key point was to practice those fakey frontside axle lock-ins on a quarter pipe, and then remember the amount of purchase it took to get successfully locked in, and then transfer that onto the spine. Try and keep the body momentum going over the top, and as I did that, just keep the back foot finessed so I could feel out its transfer into that second bit of coping, and that would allow for just a standard backside axle stall back in. Well, that's it for the concrete spine ramp video. I look forward to doing more of these, trying to develop my fluidity and consistency. I also look forward to trying some slightly more advanced spine transfers. As ever, my mate Pai Kasari was on hand to provide a little bit of inspiration. If you're new to the channel, feel free to hit subscribe. I make new videos every week. As ever, my name's been John Bishop, and I'm a middle-aged guy learning how to skate.